Donald Trump just canceled the Super Bowl, not the game itself, his attendance. And the reason why should be the biggest story in America right now, because his own advisors told reporters exactly why he's not going. Quote, "If you go to that stadium, you will be booed loudly on camera in front of the largest television audience of the year." Let me say that again. The President of the United States is too afraid to attend a football game because his own team knows he'll be humiliated on live television in front of 100 million people. This is not speculation. This is what his advisors are saying out loud. And it connects to something much bigger. Because while Trump is hiding from football fans, he's laying groundwork to steal the midterm elections. Chris Hayes just laid out exactly what's coming. Jamie Raskin revealed the administration's psychological state. And the Super Bowl cancellation is just one piece of a much larger pattern of fear and retreat. Let me show you everything. Now let me show you why this connects to something much more dangerous. Because Chris Hayes just laid out what's coming. And you need to pay very close attention to this.
Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. As you know, it is already 2026. We're in the midterm election year. 9 months away from Election Day. 9 months today. And Donald Trump and members of his administration are already making moves to try to illegitimately take control of the American election system. Now, Trump doesn't want Republicans to lose the House and the Senate. One big reason in particular, I think, that he keeps making very clear.
You got to win the midterms. Because if we don't win the midterms, it's just going to be, they'll find a reason to impeach me. I'll get impeached.
I don't think he's wrong, and I really think he's very obsessed with legacy right now. Like, he does not want to go for his third impeachment. He's obsessed with keeping control of Congress. I think, honestly, primarily for that reason, because it's not like he cares about passing legislation or cares about other people's electoral fortunes. But the thing is, he's obsessed about keeping Congress, and he has no real plan to do it normally or legitimately, right? I mean, despite all the bravado and the constant boasts about never being more popular, they know the score. The administration actually understands that Trump is in trouble. The Republican Party's in trouble. And it's not just polling. Look at this. You might have seen this over the weekend. A Texas special election that happened over the weekend in which a Democrat flipped a red state Senate seat, winning by 14 points in a district Trump carried by 17 points in 2024. That's a 31-point swing. That is almost literally unheard of. Now, don't expect a blowout like that in November. You're going to have turnout that's going to be much higher. That was a low turnout election. Democrats tend to do better in those. But even a 10-point swing in the midterms would wipe out the Republican majority. Heck, a 5-point swing in the midterms would wipe out the Republican House majority. So they know what they're facing. They see the writing on the walls. And they know they don't right now, unless things change dramatically, have a path to just outright winning a free and fair election. I mean, most normal incumbents who aren't Donald Trump see their party suffer losses in the midterms, right? So Donald Trump is exploring other plans. The first plan was to gerrymander congressional maps. Why leave it up to voters to choose Republicans when Republicans could simply choose their voters? And so Donald Trump tenaciously, constantly pushed red states to redraw their districts to be even redder, right? To change their congressional districts mid-decade. This never happens, right? Texas did it. Missouri did it. Ohio still may. But Trump's pressure generated a backlash. First, among Republicans in, for instance, Indiana, who just told him to take a hike, wouldn't do what he wanted, despite J.D. Vance going there in person, inviting him to the White House, right? And also in blue states like California, which defensively redrew its maps. And so when all is said and done, between California, what's happening in Virginia, maybe Maryland, the fact Indiana wouldn't do it, the whole thing made the gerrymandering war a wash. It could actually, in the end up net benefiting the Democrats because Donald Trump started this fight. So now midterm election year is upon us. That gerrymandering plan has really failed. I think they thought this was like their secret weapon, right? Their ace in the hole. No. So now it's time for the Republican plan B. And that is, and they're saying this out loud, to fully seize the machinery of American voting.
Now, let me connect this back to the Super Bowl, because it's not just Trump who canceled. Remember what else was supposed to happen at the Super Bowl? ICE agents were going to be deployed throughout the stadium. Kristi Noem announced it publicly, framed it as immigration enforcement, a show of strength. And then, very quietly, they walked it back, canceled the deployment. The same administration that projects toughness on immigration backed down from the biggest sporting event of the year. Why? Because they understood the optics would be devastating. ICE agents roaming through crowds of football fans, potentially detaining people at a family event, watched by 100 million Americans. That footage would have defined the administration for months, so they retreated, just like Trump retreated. And here's what this reveals. When confronted with situations where public reaction is visible and uncontrolled, this administration backs down. That's not strength, that's fear. And it means something critical. Pressure works. Public opposition has impact. They're not as confident as they pretend. Batman showed up at a Santa Clara council meeting. ICE canceled their Super Bowl deployment. That's cause and effect. Showing up matters. Making opposition visible matters. Because they're tracking it, they're afraid of it, and they're changing plans because of it. Now let me show you how Democrats are framing what comes next. Because Jamie Raskin just laid out the accountability framework, and it's important. Watch this.
I just want to remind people that Kristi Noem won't be secretary forever. Donald Trump won't be president forever. Suggesting that 3 years from now we could have a Democratic president, we could have a new attorney general. That Justice Department would be empowered to do real criminal investigations of these shootings, of these beatings, and of these arrests. And so those agents may all get a federal pardon from Donald Trump so that the federal government won't be able to do that in the next administration. But without that pardon, this remains an open possibility for the next Justice Department to investigate, doesn't it?
Of course. Well, we're going to have real attorney generals again. People like Robert F. Kennedy, people like Edward Levy, people like Janet Reno. We're going to have a real Justice Department again. We're going to have a real criminal division again that brings criminal actions against government officials who violate the civil rights of the people. We are going to restore and we're going to fortify and improve the rule of law. And we know it's not as simple as just turning the clock back to the time before Donald Trump, because obviously those were the conditions that allowed for Donald Trump and MAGA to penetrate our society and take over our government. We're going to have to fortify democracy and freedom to make them much stronger going forward. And having been through this nightmare together and with the heroic resistance and opposition that we're seeing all over the country, we're going to make it through. We need to obviously mobilize the vote and keep winning the way we won in Virginia, in New Jersey, in California, in Alabama, the way we just won in Texas, a 31-point swing in a state Senate election. We're going to keep going, and we have to defend those elections because Donald Trump, who obviously has no other program for America relating to health care, relating to housing for young people, relating to any public good, has one objective in mind, which is trying to steal the election the way he tried to steal it back in 2020 when he called the Republican Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger in Georgia, and said, I just want you to find me 11,780 votes. That wasn't Donald Trump trying to stop election fraud. That was Donald Trump trying to commit election fraud. And he did it all over the country, and he will try again. But we are ready for him, and we have people fighting all over America to defend the democratic institutions that we've got.
Let me break down what the Super Bowl cancellation tells us about Trump's psychological state. First, they're polling obsessively. They knew exactly how a California crowd would react. They knew the television audience would see it. They calculated the risk and decided hiding was safer. That's fear-based decision-making, not strength. Second, his advisors have real influence. Trump's instinct is always to seek attention, to be at the center of major events. But his team talked him out of it, which means they can constrain his worst impulses when stakes are high enough. That's leverage opponents can use. Third, they're terrified of viral moments. The concern wasn't just boos in person. It was clips circulating online for weeks. They understand social media amplification turns one bad moment into sustained narrative. They're afraid of losing control of the story. Fourth, the tough guy image is performance, an administration that projects dominance backed down from a football game. They backed down from deploying ICE at a sporting event. The gap between rhetoric and reality is becoming impossible to hide. And here's what to watch for in coming weeks. More canceled appearances. If Trump starts avoiding venues where crowds can't be controlled, you'll know the Super Bowl pattern is becoming standard. More polling obsession. His team is tracking approval in granular detail. If numbers keep declining, expect more defensive scheduling. More midterm interference. Hayes' warning wasn't hypothetical. If Trump's numbers don't improve, expect him to question election legitimacy and watch ICE deployments. They back down from the Super Bowl. Will they back down from other high-visibility operations? Or will they just find venues with less media coverage? So here's what comes next. Chris Hayes warned us. Trump is going to try to seize control of the voting machinery. He might publicly call for canceling the midterms. Democrats need to prepare responses now, before he says it, and the rest of us need to keep doing what's working. Show up to council meetings, protest ICE operations, support legal challenges, vote in every election, make opposition visible and loud, because they're tracking it, they're afraid of it, and they're changing plans because of it. A president who's too scared to attend a football game is not operating from strength. Remember that when they try to project dominance. Remember that when they claim they're unstoppable. They canceled the Super Bowl because they were afraid of the crowd. That's the reality behind the performance. If this breakdown showed you something the media is missing, hit that like button. Subscribe and turn on notifications because we're tracking every retreat, every cancellation, every sign that pressure is working. Comment below with your thoughts on Trump skipping the Super Bowl, and share this with anyone who thinks resistance doesn't matter. Because it does. They're proving it every time they back down, every time they retreat, every time they make decisions based on fear of public reaction. We have more power than they want us to know, and we're going to keep using it. Stay loud, keep fighting, and I'll see you in the next one.